Melmetal has got to be the most peculiar Pokemon out there. There's so much mystery surrounding it, raising even more questions. And the way it was revealed was unlike any other Pokemon revealed prior to it. We first heard about Melmetal, or rather its pre-evolution Melton, through a mysterious event in Pokemon Go of all things, where it was just dropped on us randomly and unexpectedly. I honestly thought that at first this was some sort of mistake from the Pokemon Go team, since at first glance Melton seemed like it was more of a placeholder or something unintended for players to see in the game. I ended up being wrong about this, and Melton ended up being the new mythical Pokemon at the time, with a catch. The catch was Melton and Melmetal are available through Pokemon Go, which could then be transferred over to Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, and nowhere else at this point in time. Now, the Let's Go games are considered main series Pokemon games, however, there's no denying that they stand out a little bit compared to every other mainline Pokemon games due to the absence of abilities amongst many other smaller things. I was almost certain that come the next generation games, which ended up being Sword and Shield, we would get a proper story for Melmetal and what it is, but nothing happened. Melmetal is currently unobtainable in Sword and Shield despite having a Gigantamax form, which only raises even more questions. So what exactly is Melmetal? What is its story? Where did it come from? I'm going to try my best to answer as many of the questions about Melmetal as I can, as well as give some speculation on what I think Melmetal could be and where it came from. Now, it's been a little over a year since we first heard about Melton and Melmetal, and although it appearing nearly 2 years after the release of Sun and Moon, it is still considered Generation 7 Pokemon, despite not being obtainable in Sun and Moon or Ultra Sun and Moon. Melmetal does have the ability Iron Fist, which does fit with its Pokedex description stating that it packs a very powerful punch, but we'll get more into the dex descriptions later on in the video. Although there's no way to actually use this ability since, again, you can't get this Pokemon in Sun and Moon, which have abilities, you can only get it in Let's Go, which don't have abilities. Now maybe when, or if, we get Melmetal in Sword and Shield, we'll finally be able to use it with the Iron Fist. Now strangely enough, there have been instances in the past, such as with AZ's Floette back in X and Y, where we have a Pokemon that exists within the game itself, but can never be legitimately obtainable in the game or through any events. Melmetal could unfortunately suffer the same fate in Sword and Shield, but I sure hope that's not the case. I did see on Twitter recently that apparently patents were filed for up to 5 new Pokeball Pluses, which are essentially a Pokeball shaped Switch controller designed for Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee at the time, which I guess also work with Sword and Shield, that also contained a Mew that can be transferred into your game. It is possible to get Melmetal that way in Sword and Shield, similar to Mew in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, although I don't think the fangirls would be particularly happy with Melmetal being hidden behind a paywall. I do think it would be cool, however, to see Melmetal distributed in Sword and Shield through some type of online Wi-Fi event, or maybe one of those events where you have to go to a certain store in order to get a code or download the Pokemon, and maybe even have some sort of mini story element, kind of like what they used to do with events in Heart Gold and Soul Silver briefly, where they would release an event Pokemon and have some sort of small story event triggering it, which would make the events a lot more fun, instead of just having the Pokemon handed to you like we've had in the 3DS Pokemon games. I do think it's a bit weird how when they do a lot of these event Pokemon, especially in the 3DS games, you just sort of are given the Pokemon without any other context or anything else to do. In Heart Gold and Soul Silver at least give you a reason, and seeing Melmetal do that in Sword and Shield would I think add a lot to the character, and also answer a lot of potential questions that we have with the Pokemon. Now, as for Melton and Melmetal's dex entries, this is where we finally get a little bit of backstory on Melmetal's history. In the Let's Go games, Melmetal's dex entry reads that, revered long ago for its capacity to create iron from nothing, for some reason it has come back to life after 3,000 years. This indicates, of course, that Melmetal had recently come back to life after a very long time being dormant, which would explain why it was never present in any Pokemon game before. In Pokemon Sword, Melmetal's dex entry is a bit more interesting as it reads, in a distant land, there are legends about a Cyclopean giant. In fact, the giant was a Melmetal that was flooded with Gigantamax energy. This would suggest that thousands of years ago, Melmetal, and Gigantamaxing for that matter, existed in a distant land. Up until now, the only region where Gigantamaxing is even possible is the Galar region, which would suggest that Melmetal is from a new region that is also capable of Gigantamaxing. This different region could potentially be the Sinnoh region, as much like how Hoenn in the remake games of Mega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire takes place in a different universe than the Hoenn seen in Ruby and Sapphire, in order to accommodate for the Mega Evolution Pokemon revealed in Generation 6. The same can be said for a potential Sinnoh remake with Gigantamax existing in Sinnoh. Now the flaw to this theory is that if Melmetal is really native to Sinnoh, why would it have been revealed a year ago as opposed to sometime around now, or the distant future, which would make more sense and fit more in line with a potential Diamond and Pearl remake. I think it's pretty safe to assume that within the next 2 years or so we will have some sort of Diamond and Pearl remake or follow-up game of some kind on the Switch. And if Melmetal is native to Sinnoh, it only makes sense to reveal it at a later date than they initially did. There's also the weird evolution requirement to Melton of having to evolve it in Pokemon Go with candy, which could suggest that the distant land or whatever it is could be the Pokemon Go region, whatever that's based off of. There are of course a lot of flaws with that theory as well, but these are just some of the best guesses I can make about Melmetal based on the limited information that we know. We don't even have a movie based on Melmetal or anything, as a lot of other mythical Pokemon tend to have movies based around their lore and history, although Melton and Melmetal do appear in the Pokemon Sun and Moon anime, where Meltons are found on Melmetal Island in the Alola region. Later on, other Meltons end up fusing with Ash's Melton to form a Melmetal. Ash eventually leaves his Melmetal with Professor Kukui at the end of the Sun and Moon series, without ever explaining what this Pokemon really is, as even Professor Kukui was unaware of this Pokemon's existence when they first found it on the island. Now this next clue about Melmetal comes from the TCG. It probably doesn't mean much, but I do think it is still worth mentioning. Now there is a card in the TCG that is Lucario and Melmetal Tag Team GX. If you're unfamiliar with the TCG as of lately, basically tag teams are 2 Pokemon on the same card. There tends to be some sort of relation between the Pokemon that are tag teams. For example, we have Reshiram and Zekrom tag team, as well as Solgaleo and Lunala tag team, which have relations being cover legendaries. So maybe this could suggest that Lucario is in some way, shape, or form related to Melmetal outside of both of them sharing the steel typing. And since Lucario is a Generation 4 Pokemon from the Sinnoh region, maybe we will see Melmetal finally get the lore it deserves in any potential Diamond and Pearl remake alongside Lucario. And that's pretty much everything we know about Melmetal so far, as well as some of potential speculation as what it could be. In a nutshell, it is a Gen 7 mythical Pokemon with an evolutionary line, which is unheard of for mythicals. The closest thing we have, of course, is Manaphy and Phione, but Phione doesn't evolve into Manaphy. It's only available in Pokemon Go, and isn't obtainable in any of the Alola games despite being a Gen 7 Pokemon, and in the Alola anime. There's even some Melmetal TCG cards in the Sun and Moon era of the sets. And it currently even has Gigantamax form in Sword and Shield, despite not currently being obtainable in Sword and Shield. I feel like through making this video I've only had more questions for Melmetal that I want answered, but hopefully we learn more about Melton and Melmetal soon, as over a year after its initial reveal, it is still surrounded by so much mystery.